Hello, this is Sondra Oster Baras bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. And this week's Torah portion, Ki Tavo, is indeed about the heart of Biblical Israel. And I'd like to just focus on the very beginning of the portion, the beginning of chapter 26 in Deuteronomy. And the portion begins, and it'll come to pass when you come into the land which the Lord your God has given you for an inheritance, and you will possess it, inherit it, and settle in it. Okay, so this is the background. Of course, all of Deuteronomy is against this background as Moses speaks to the nation in the weeks before his death, preparing the nation for their entry into the land and their ultimate settling of that land. But here we're talking about a very specific commandment. When the people of Israel are commanded to take their first fruits and bring those fruits in a basket to the temple. Okay, so again, it begins with coming into the land that the Lord God has given you. Then you take the first of the fruits that the Lord, as it says in verse B, that you will bring forth from the land which the Lord your God has given you. Okay, and you put them in a basket, and you will go to the place that the Lord God has selected. In other words, ultimately the temple. Okay, and then they go to the priest, and then they bring this basket of first fruits to the priest. And then there's a very specific language, text that they are then supposed to read. And I'd like to focus on this language because it's very, very interesting. Okay, so you say as follows. You say, my forefather was a wandering Aramite. Okay, this is probably referring to Jacob, who spent all those years in Aram at the house of Laban as a stranger until he got back, etc. But the focus here is on the fact that the nation then, as a family, goes down to Egypt. They are there persecuted, even as they grow into a nation, and then they cry to God, and God listens to their cries and redeems them from Egypt. So we have this whole recitation of Jewish history. Now, what does this have to do with the first fruits that they've just harvested from the land? Now, if you think about it, many cultures and many religions have a Thanksgiving type of holiday or procedure where the individual farmer or a group of farmers, after they bring in the harvest, have some kind of Thanksgiving ceremony to God. The focus there is always on the individual farmer and the produce that he has succeeded in bringing forth from the land, thanks to God's help, or thanks to God's blessing, or thanks to the rain that God has brought, the thanksgiving that they feel. And I think there isn't a farmer alive. I was once told that farmers are probably the most religious people on earth, because every farmer knows that no matter how much hard work he puts in, he is very much dependent on the weather. And of course, it is only God who controls the weather, and therefore farmers can see so much more directly than anybody else how directly involved God is in the success of their labors. Okay, so most times you would assume that this Thanksgiving ceremony would be an individual thing where an individual person comes before God in some way, and in this case bringing the first fruits of his own land and thanking God for the success of the harvest. But here we have a completely different element that enters into it. This person is not coming as an individual, but he's coming as a member of the nation of Israel and reciting the history of the nation. The culmination of that history is in verse 9. And he brought us to this place, and he gave us this land, a land flowing in milk and honey. So we are not just thanking God for our personal blessing, we are thanking God for the national blessing, for our history, and the ultimate goal of that history, from the creation of the nation, the enslavement of Egypt, the exodus from Egypt. The goal is that to bring us here to this land, which is a beautiful land. And it's only at the very end of that whole recitation that the individual then turns to God as an individual and says, and therefore I bring before you the first of the fruits that you gave me, not you gave us. Until then, it's us. Now it's you gave me. So basically, in this little scene that is described for us at the beginning of the Torah portion, we have a very interesting coming together of God, of course, but God is coming together both with the nation of Israel, with the land of Israel, and with the individual person of Israel. And it is this combination, I think, that is so unique to the nation of Israel and to God's plan for us, that every individual has a relationship with God, or should have a relationship with God. But what God did uniquely for the Jewish people is to select us as a people and to select the land to be a land for the people, where our appreciation for God's bounty is ultimately tied up with the nation and with the land. So just remember that when someone tells you, what's the difference between the land of Israel and any other land? What's the difference between the nation of Israel and their relation to the land? Everything about the relationship between the land of Israel and the people of Israel is unique, because it has all been set aside and blessed and it put with, fulfilled with destiny by God, the God of Israel. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below, as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.